we'll do this. Okay, awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. This is Pat Hintz. It is Thursday night, and we have our open mic night, sort of an open discussion around science and what that means for us at Amare Global. Welcome to all of you, especially those of you who might be joining us for the first time. Looks like we got a packed house again tonight, so that's great. We welcome you. We thank you for taking the time to be here. We're so excited. We've got just so many good things going on right now with Amare, and many of you are out there just beating the bushes on this thing and having a blast and making a difference in the lives of so many people. It's just really exciting, and we are at the right place, the right time, with the right group of people. And so tonight we have our normal get-together on Thursday nights where we just have discussions with Dr. Sean around some of the things that are most important topics that we sort of create a list and check them off as we go. We've done some deep dives. We've done some general discussions. We've done questions and answers. And so tonight we're going to have maybe a little bit of everything. And I know that Dr. Sean has got some things that he wanted to talk to us about tonight. And so I will, without further ado, just introduce you to our Chief Science Officer. For those of you who don't know, Sean deserves this type of introduction. He is just a wealth of knowledge for all of us. We are blessed to have Dr. Sean as our Chief Science Officer. He comes to us with decades of experience, one of the foremost formulators of natural nutritional products in the industry today, bar none. He's a founding executive here with Amare Global, and a big reason why Amare has become the mental wellness company and a leader in this space, and we believe to be a global leader as we go into the future together. And so the author of 13 books and just a brilliant man who is ready to share with us some insights into some of the things that he has available for us. So, Sean, without any further stoppage, let's click it over to you and you do your thing. Let me unmute you. Hang on.
Unmute. There we go. All right, here we go. Thanks a lot, Pat. Appreciate that. So for this Thursday night science talk, rather than doing sort of a deep dive like we've done on the last bunch of them, I thought what we'd do is do I'm going to talk about one particular topic in general, but I want to leave some time at the end for people to ask questions about their own experiences with what I'm going to talk about. And what I'm going to talk about tonight is this concept of sort of weathering the storm, right? Whenever people start on a new regimen, sometimes they can feel kind of yucky for a bunch of days. And I want to explain a couple things, why that happens, how that happens, and importantly, how we can help people get through that kind of thing. With fewer symptoms and, easier, and, we really come out the other side feeling better, which is what they're trying to achieve in the first place. But before I say that, I want to give a shout out to you, Pat, for posting all of the videos. All the deep dive videos are up on Zoom with Pat, right? If they go to Zoom with Pat and go to the bottom, they can click on a button and all the deep dive videos are there for them to take a look at. And if you want to, dive into the immune system one and understand about that, because it's, flu season, and understand why it's important that you have your immune system strong, you can look at that. If you want to look at the autism one or the energy one or whatever, they're all there. So, one of the challenges with, and I've experienced this for virtually my whole career, as a nutritionist, as a physiologist, putting someone from where they are onto a new regimen, whether that's a new exercise regimen, whether it's a new dietary regimen, whether it's a new supplementation regimen. Anytime you change something, the promise of it, the reason that you're making that change is to improve something. You're trying to improve your energy, you're trying to improve your mood, you're trying to lose some weight, you're trying to put on some muscle mass, you're trying to do something positive. And so it's very disconcerting for people if they don't immediately start feeling good. Lots of people do. Lots of people, you can take them from a terrible diet, put them on a really good, healthy regimen, and literally the day they start it, they start feeling better and they rave about it, and their energy is better and their mood is better and there's a spring in their step, and they're getting everything they wanted to out of making this change. But about, and on a, sort of an estimate, about 10% of the time, that person, when they make that change, whatever the change is, they feel worse. And that is very disconcerting for somebody when they thought they were making a change to feel better, and now they feel worse. And the way they feel worse, they'll typically they almost feel like they have the flu. They feel tired. They feel this malaise. They might have body aches. They might be tired. They might have headaches. They might have brain fog and not be able to focus. They might be irritable or tense or anxious or just moody. They just don't feel good, right? They might just blah. And those very same things that I just described might be the reasons that they wanted to change in the first place, right? So, they have those at some degree. They make a change, and now they still have those, and sometimes they have them at an even more pronounced degree. And so they'll immediately think, well, this diet's not the right match for me, this supplementation regimen, I must be sensitive to something, and so they'll stop. One thing, I said this on a call recently, because that happens about in about 10% of the people. It's one of the reasons in the kinds of research studies that I've done for my whole career, these sort of lifestyle intervention studies, that we do not take measurements in our research studies from baseline to week 2. Right? Within those 2 weeks, that's this adjustment period where people are, sometimes feeling better, sometimes feeling worse, sometimes feeling better, sometimes feeling worse. We let them go through that adjustment period, and then we start taking our follow-up measurements to see how whatever the intervention is having its effect. So, we might do a baseline, time point 0, and then 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, but we're typically not doing 1 week or 8 days or 9 days, because that's during the period of time where your body's going through this adjustment. So I want people to realize that that's a real thing. It's not common, but it's not uncommon either. So, it shouldn't freak people out to hear this kind of thing, right? It doesn't freak me out because I've been experiencing it for 20 years in the kind of work that I do. But why is this happening, right? A lot of people will see that happen, and they'll email me. And they'll say, oh my gosh, there's this big problem that, is it a detox reaction, right? That's the terminology people want to use. And I don't necessarily like that term, because detox doesn't mean a heck of a lot. If we can identify the toxins that we're talking about, then it does mean something. If we can say, well, this person's adipose tissue, their fat cells are now starting to release an accumulation of benzene molecules or formaldehyde or carbon tetrachloride, or I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of them that your body will accumulate over time. People will be like, what are these sort of undescribed, mysterious toxins that you're releasing, right? They'll kind of poo-poo it a little bit, but what they don't realize is that fat tissue, we used to think fat tissue was just this sort of ignorant depot that was just there for storage, right? It was just a warehouse that we threw our extra calories into. And now we know that it really is more like an endocrine organ, right? So it doesn't just store things. It doesn't just store fat. It certainly stores fat, but as a result of that, it can accumulate things that we're exposed to. It can accumulate, chlorine kinds of chlorinated compounds that we get from the water we drink. It can accumulate hydrocarbon kinds of compounds that we might breathe in from air pollution. People will look at that and go, well, why in the world would the fat tissue do that? One of the things that we think the fat tissue does now is that, not only does it store energy, and it's sort of a reservoir for energy for us, but it also protects us. It serves a role to kind of sequester those environmental toxins that we're exposed to. I should probably expand. It's not just the water we drink and the air we breathe. It's pharmaceuticals that we're exposed to. It's over-the-counter drugs. It's food additives and colors. I mean, it's all sorts of things that we're exposed to. It's, insecticides and herbicides. You go and play with your dog on the grass at the park. You're being exposed to all sorts of insecticides and herbicides and fertilizers, and your body needs to detox from that, right? So your kidney will do some of that. Your gastrointestinal tract will do some of that. Your liver will do some of that. But in today's modern world, we're exposed to so much of that, those detox organs sometimes can't keep up. So what ends up happening is your fat cells kind of step in and sequester some of that toxin load and just hold on to it, right? You sort of put it in the garage for a while. But what happens is when you go onto a healthy regimen and you start to lose a little bit of weight, you start to change the way your gut metabolizes, you start to change how your immune system starts signaling through the body, which people have heard me talk about a lot. That sends a signal to your adipose tissue that things are changing in the body. And that sort of opens up the garage door. And so your fat cells will release some of that into the systemic circulation, and now you're re-exposed to it. So that's this detox effect, right? It's actually, in a sense, it's not really a detox effect. It's a tox effect, because you're taking these stored toxins that maybe you've been exposed to little by little by little over 20 years, let's say, and now you're opening that garage door and you're releasing them into the system, and now your body is being, bam, exposed to a whole bunch of stuff all at once. And that's what leads to all those feelings of body aches and flu-like symptoms and, energy and brain fog and irritability and all that kind of stuff. So that's where it's coming from. So what causes that garage door to go up, so to speak? What causes that adipose tissue to start releasing that stuff, whereas before it was kind of sequestering before? So I mentioned just a few minutes ago that we used to think that the adipose tissue was just this storage depot. And it's not just that, it's also this sequestering organ, right, to protect us from that toxin load. It's also an endocrine organ. And what I mean by that is that it's part of our hormone response system in the body. Every bit as much as your adrenal glands produce adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisol, and every bit as much as your pituitary gland and your thyroid gland, and all the hormonal glands produce these signaling hormones. Your adipose tissue, your fat tissue, is also an endocrine organ. It controls in some of the appetite satiety hormones that, are we hungry? Are we full? Are we satiated? Are we not? It's involved in communication with the immune system. It's involved in communication with your inflammatory system and cytokines. So now you can see sort of where the fat tissue comes in. We talk a lot about this gut-brain axis, kind of a communication network. A big part of that axis is the immune system. A big part of that axis is the inflammatory cascade. A big part of that axis is this other separate axis called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, also known as your stress response system. So once you go into somebody and say, okay, we're going to modulate your microbiome, which controls your immune system. Your immune system controls your inflammatory system. Your immune system communicates with your HPA axis in your adrenal glands. All of that interacts with your metabolic control system. So if your cortisol is high, your insulin doesn't work as well, so your blood sugar isn't controlled. Your thyroid hormone doesn't work as well, so your overall metabolism isn't controlled. So you can see when we go and we start manipulating microbiome, gut lining, immune system, inflammatory system, nervous system signaling. There's hard wires that go right to the adipose tissue as well. You're going to get signals that tell the adipose tissue, tell your fat cells, something is going on here. Something is going on good in the body. And what we think happens is why that garage door starts going up and your fat tissues start to release those toxins into the system. Your fat tissues are probably getting some sort of a signal that says the body is ready to heal now. The immune system is stronger. The inflammatory index is lower. The stress response system is more resilient now. We're ready for it, right? So the body in some way is sending those signals to the adipose tissue to say, release that stuff you have been sequestering. We're ready to get rid of it now, right? So your fat tissues do that. They open up, they send that stuff into the system, and in some levels, you are ready for it, right? Your immune system is ready to get some of that out of there. Your inflammatory cascade is low, so it's ready to be, re-inflamed a little bit, if you can think of it that way. Your stress response system is in a state where it's a little more resilient, and so now you can release those kinds of things, because when you release those into the body, that sets off a stress response. And if you're not resilient enough to it, it could send you into a sort of a downward spiral. Instead of being vigorous, you'd be more towards, inclined to, fall off towards burnout. So the body, it really is doing better and is telling the fat tissue, release that stuff. We're ready to do the housekeeping. We're ready to get it out of there. But sometimes that release ends up overwhelming the system. And so you asked for it, and the body gives it to you, and you go, oh, geez, I shouldn't have asked for it. So that's kind of the background in terms of what's happening. Like, we kind of brought it on ourselves, because in those, so think of it this way. When does this happen for most people? It typically doesn't happen after day 1. It might happen after day 2 or 3, but it's usually in that sort of 2 or 3 days to 7-day period is when these sort of flu-like detox symptoms are most pronounced, most predominant. And so, that time course makes perfect sense for the biochemistry I just described. So your body goes through this little bit of a balancing. There's this sensation and the signaling of we're ready. The fat tissue obliges, opens up the garage door, sends all that stuff out there, and sometimes we do perfectly well with it. But those 10% of people get overwhelmed. And so what do we do for those people? How can we get them to not just say, all right, this is for me, I'm going to back off? Because as soon as you back off, all of those good systems start going back down to normal. The fat tissue says, all right, this stuff is still in the system. Like, we released it, but it's still here. Nobody took care of it. Nobody did the housekeeping, right? So it resequesters it, and that stuff is going to be there for the next time you try to go through a rebalancing regimen. So if you sort of backed off all the way and said, I can't do this right now, put your fundamentals kit on the shelf, and then came back to it 2 months from now, you're going to go through the same thing probably. And so what we like to do is try to help people ease themselves through that. So probably the best way that people can do it is to not stop, but to back off. Go down to, using fundamentals as an example, go down to half a dose. And then what you can get is you can get this rebalancing effect to still be going through its process, but not at such a great magnitude of effect. So you can think of it this way, right? If you opened up the garage door all the way and all this stuff started flooding out, you could go, oh my gosh, boom, close the garage door. And then half dose is sort of like opening it up halfway. So just a little bit comes out. And that might be enough of you're able to go through the rebalancing process at a lower level of symptoms, if you will. The downside of doing that is that you might need to go through it for longer. So you're going to have less symptoms for a longer period of time. So instead of going through that adjustment phase of 3 to 7 days, let's say, now it might be 2 weeks that you're going through this feeling of feeling so-so, instead of going through 3 to 7 days of feeling yucky. What I do like to encourage people to do, if they're open to it, and if they're not suffering too much, so to speak, is to just stick with it. Stick with the regimen, understand, understand what you're going through. And if you're able to, just lean into it and go, yeah, let's do this, right? I'm going to feel terrible for 4 days, but on day 5, I'm going to feel amazing. Or day 6, I'm going to feel amazing. Or day 7, it's this idea of pulling off the Band-Aid, right? Just realizing, I'm one of those people who must have been really, really had a real high toxin load at one point, and I've sequestered all this stuff. Now I'm releasing it, and I'm just going to go, and just kind of grip my teeth and go through it, right? You can do that. So that's another way to do it. Other ways to kind of ease yourself through is that sometimes you can take the products along with food, and along with a lot of water. This is one of the reasons that our reboot system is designed the way that it is. So you think about what you're doing when you're on the reboot system. You're eating certain foods, a lot of high fiber foods, high fiber, high polyphenol, high flavonoid foods to grow those good bacteria. The foods that you're avoiding are foods that, tend to be higher sugar foods, higher processed foods, lower fiber foods. Those are the kinds of foods that grow the bad bacteria. So if you're eating predominantly good bacteria food, you're going to grow those, which is a good thing. But you're also going to starve the bad bacteria. When those bad bacteria die off, very similar to these fat cells that are releasing these toxins into your systemic circulation, these bad bacteria die off are going to be releasing inflammatory compounds into your gut and into your systemic circulation. So you're getting that sort of toxin load through a completely different mechanism now. So when that happens, we have you drink a lot of water. That helps flush the system. We also give you the reboot capsules. Now, what those reboot capsules are doing is helping your body to detox through its three primary pathways. The gut, so that you poop more, right? You get those bad bacteria out quicker. The quicker you can get them out, the less ability they're going to have to be releasing their contents into the gut and into the systemic circulation. Once they release them into the systemic circulation, the two best ways to get rid of them once they're released is to filter them out through the kidneys. That's why you're drinking so much water. And to get the liver to do its conjugation process, which is one of its primary detox pathways. So the liver is actually your primary detox agent. And we've got some herbs in there, some patented herbs. One of them is a blend called Sabatin that gets the herb to specifically get rid of some of the most predominant environmental toxins, things like prescription medications, things like over-the-counter medications, things like pesticides and herbicides, and what are called POPs, persistent organic pollutants, that are just sort of around us in the environment. Things like carbon tetrachloride and things like that. So we're exposed to a lot. And your liver does a piece of that, your fat cells do a piece of that, your kidneys do a piece of that, your gut does a piece of that. And so what we're trying to do is sort of up-regulate all of those different pathways to ease you through this process. So, that's one piece of it. Drinking more water is a piece of it. Taking with food is a piece of it. Backing off the dose for a period of time is a piece of it. And then ripping off the Band-Aid. Just sort of intellectually understanding what your body's going through is also a big piece of it. Because what we see all the time is that that 10% of people that go through this process or go through these side effects, so to speak, they do come out the other side feeling absolutely amazing. And sometimes they're actually the ones with the best stories because, they weren't just feeling so-so and then amazing. They were feeling so-so and then terrible, and they stuck with it. And that sort of change from feeling really, really bad to feeling really, really good is just such an emotional story for them. Sometimes, those are the ones that you really like to hear anyway. But you do come out the other side feeling better. Your vigor comes back, your energy comes back. All the things that we're feeling or that we're hearing sort of manifest for that person. But sometimes you need to go through that. But so that's kind of the overview. It involves the gut, it involves the stress response system, it involves the inflammatory cascade, it involves the immune system, it involves the nerves, it involves these fat cells, which is probably the first time that I've talked to you guys about this aspect of it. But if you think about what the fat tissue is, it's not just this storage depot. It really is part of this entire gut-brain axis kind of a motif that we've been talking about. So it makes sense when you think about it in those ways. So with that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. We're 7:30, so I think we've got plenty of time for people to ask their own particular questions.
Yeah, let me see if I can jump in here and ask you a question just that comes to mind for me, Sean, and I'll click this over here to me. But let me ask you this: with the fat cells and stuff, is it appropriate to say that someone that's leaner than someone else may have fewer issues than someone who is maybe a little heavier set or whatever, has more fat cells to capture those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. It actually doesn't matter what your fat load is in terms of how much extra fat you're carrying, because even a very lean person, like did the Olympics start today? I think the Olympics opening ceremony is today, right? So think about Olympic athletes, right? They've got like 2% body fat, a lot of those people. They still have plenty of fat on their bodies to do this sequestering kind of a function in their body. So it isn't just that this happens when you have a lot of fat, but if you have a lot of fat, you've got a lot of places to store that. Even somebody who's very lean and very, very fit and doesn't really have a lot of that extra fat, they still have plenty of adipose tissue distributed throughout their body, and they're going to have plenty of ability to have that sort of retoxing effect if they've had that high toxin load at some point and their bodies have gone through that sequestering process.
Okay,
for sure.
Right. Cool, great answer. I've got one.
Yeah, and it doesn't really. Another aspect of that is that you don't have to be losing weight in order for this to happen, right? This is one of the things that's really unique about it, is that sometimes people think that this kind of a detox effect only comes with substantial weight loss, and it doesn't need to, because there's I mean, it certainly can, right? If people go through a big weight loss diet, they've got they're jettisoning a lot of this stored adipose tissue, and along with that comes these toxins. But what we're talking about really is this signaling change in the body. And if you think of that adipose tissue really as a participant in the signaling throughout the body, it really makes a lot of sense. That tissue is getting new signals, and your body is saying, okay, release this to us. We're ready to handle it now. And sometimes we are, and sometimes we aren't, depending on what load comes at us.
Right. Jenny asked a great question in the chat area there, that somebody has been exposed to high amounts of toxins, prescriptions, etc. How often might they want to reboot to assist the body in releasing those elements? Is it more often for them maybe than other people?
Yeah, and this is how I answer that question. Sometimes people will say, how often should I do a reboot? And my response is, what does your background lifestyle look like? What is your toxin load from your diet look like? From your prescription medications or over-the-counter medications? From recreational drugs? The air you breathe, the water you drink, the stress you're under, the relationships that you have. I mean, these are all sources of toxins, so to speak, right? So if you're in a situation where you're exposed to more toxins versus someone who is exposed to less toxins, that more toxin person is going to want to do more reboots. They're going to want to make their body go through that process. But I should also say too, even someone who's at the sort of a high toxin load, I don't think they would want to do it more than once a month. Like that'd be my max, that somebody would do a reboot once a month, 12 times a year, right? That'd be absolutely the maximum. Because once you go through it once, now you've put your body into a state where those signals, right? Your immune signals, your inflammatory signals, your gut-brain axis signals, they're persistent now, right? They're always telling that fat tissue, we're ready for this, right? So once you go through it the first time, that's going to be the worst, right? That's going to be the worst of the ripping off the Band-Aids. The next time won't be as bad. The next time won't be as bad. The next time won't be as bad, because it's sort of a different degree of opening up the garage door a little bit more. It's like you've opened it, and oh, that hurt. That first time you did it, ouch. That was uncomfortable. But then the next time you do it, you're like, it wasn't great, but I know what to expect. And the more a light sweep up, so to speak.
Yeah, good stuff. There's another question on here. Is there any benefit to doing it longer than the 3 days, or I know that the science tells us that we can reset the microbiome in the 3-day period, but is there any benefit to longer?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I don't know what would be the better option. I know lots of people have done this. They've said, is there any problem with me doing like a back-to-back reboot? I don't think there's any problem with it. I almost think, though, that the better approach would be to do one, go through that process, and then do another one the next month, or do them not exactly back to back. So you're doing like a 6-day reboot. I'd rather have you do a 3 and then a period of time separating them, like a month, for example, and then do another 3. I think that would be more effective. But that's just a guess. Like, we've never done any research studies around that. Just sort of, educated guess kind of a thing.
Yeah, one of the things that, and you guys get ready to ask questions and maybe give a testimonial or two here. I don't want to just take control of all the stuff here. But one of the things, I was having a conversation with Sarah Hine today, and I thought it was really a good idea for us to be able to do that, is to be able to work with you with regards to possibly even an expectation graph or chart that not just deals with the 10% who feel bad, but maybe that group. It's real easy when somebody has a great effect of our products, and the vast majority of people do. That's pretty easy. The other side of the spectrum, though, Sean, is that people come in and maybe they start to take our products. They go through the reboot without really too much issue. They start to take our products and they start to say, I just don't know if I'm feeling anything. I don't know that I'm addressing the issue that I came here to address. We're seeing, gradual. I try to put it as, sometimes the frog that is boiled 1 degree at a time doesn't realize the water's getting hot, right? So maybe we could talk about that just for a second, and then maybe to identify some additional things that might be able to be added to the regimen that would help boost the results that people are looking for in a specific area. Could you talk to us a little bit about that, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. So let me answer that question that you just asked, Pat, and then we'll flip over to. There were a couple questions that just came in on the chat room that are pretty good questions. So this is something that, and you can see me smiling because that what you just described happens all the time in mood state research, right? And I laugh because I've seen this firsthand for literally 20 years in all the different trials that we've done over the years. People will come in and we take their baseline measurements when they're chronically stressed and depressed and burned out and all that kind of stuff, and their numbers are terrible. And over the rebalancing regimen, they're feeling better 1 degree at a time, right? Like that frog that you're boiling and doesn't jump out. And you people will be like, I don't know if I feel this. And so I've maybe talked about this before, but I'm not sure. Humans don't really, for whatever reason, have a good ability to sense when we're slowly feeling better, and especially when we plateau and we're feeling way better than we were before, right? So if we can think of sort of a measurement like vigor. Here's your low vigor, state of burnout, and you're getting better, you're getting better, you're getting better, you're getting better, and then here. This person sometimes can't feel that they're better than they were down here before, because they improved over the course of 4 weeks or 8 weeks, right? So it was 1 degree at a time. But what they can perceive is that once we stop whatever the regimen was, a lot of times they start going down, and they definitely sense that. They can sense feeling worse by a degree. And so the world is falling apart when they go down 1 degree and down 1 degree and down 1 degree. And this is well described in the scientific literature that our body, humans, for whatever reason, are much more inclined to notice and remember and perceive a negative thing, something like 3 to 10 times more predominantly than sensing a good thing, right? So you could have 50 good things happen to you today and 1 bad thing, and at the end of the day, what are you thinking about? That 1 bad thing that happened to you today. Even though your life was glorious the whole rest of the day and all this wonderfulness happened to you. It's exactly the same thing when we look at psychological mood states. So how can you get that to be more pronounced so that somebody a week on one of our rebalancing regimens goes, yeah, I definitely feel this, right? Most people do, right? But for that percentage of people, like I just said, 10% of the people are going to feel worse let's say 10% of the people don't feel anything at all. That's 20% of our potential customers. That's a big deal. It's great that the 80% are feeling amazing, but we want to be able to help these other 20% know that something else is going on. So yeah, you could add other products in. You could, tell them to cross their fingers that eventually they're going to get to a point where, that 1 + 1 + 1 is going to be 10 or 20, and they're finally going to sense it in their bodies. Or you can do this, and I know people hate when I say this, but you could tell them to stop.
Yep.
You could tell them to stop taking it. Yep. Because almost guaranteed that person's going to come back to you in 2 or 3 days and go, hey, I think it was doing something, right? And so it's happened in my own family, right? Yep. My own wife, on the Relief product, right? I've told this story before, right? She sort of, is it really working? Is it really working? But when she doesn't take it, that's when she knows, oh my gosh, I didn't take it today, and I know I can sense that it's not doing its thing because I didn't take it today. Same thing with the Fundamentals kit. When she forgets to take it, and I notice this too, if I'm traveling, right, and I forget to pack it into my little toiletry kit, and I go, oh my gosh, I can feel that I haven't taken it. Like my stress resilience is low, your irritability is a little bit more, your focus isn't quite there. And that's on one day of missing it, right? And it's, so anyway, that stop taking it can get somebody to sense that little 1 degree dip where they couldn't sense the 1 degree up. So yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Yeah, it does beautifully. And one of the things that all of us recognize is that people run faster to avoid a loss than they do to receive a gain every time. It's human nature. And yeah, so I think that is a great explanation of that. We find it all the time. We just got to get people to recognize that a consistent taking of the product will allow them to inch up, right, where they want to go. And then if they've given it a fair evaluation, then at that time, many people have actually made that recommendation to being able to say, hey, listen, just go cold turkey and stop taking them, and you will feel a difference. Or a significant other says, no, don't you dare, you have changed, and it is working. So anyway, let's go to some of these on the chat room there, bud. And why don't you
so Jenny put one in here about would high stress, high cortisol exposure fall into that category too, or a high trauma event, about being a source of a toxin. Absolutely. And, so for cortisol in particular, what you end up getting with that is, a high exposure to cortisol is going to change your metabolism, right? It's going to interfere with thyroid hormone function. It's going to interfere with insulin function, and the outcome of that metabolic change means that a lot of what we intake into the body is going to be automatically shunted towards those adipose depots. So you're going to be preferentially storing. This is one of the reasons that people store so much belly fat when they're under stress, because cortisol goes up, insulin doesn't work, thyroid doesn't work, your metabolism completely changes, you start gaining all this weight around the midsection because you're storing a lot of your calories there, but you're also storing a lot of other stuff. So if your body is shunting all of those calories towards storage in your adipose depots, you're not enabling your detox organs to do their job. They don't even get a chance to detox that stuff because it's all being stored away. And so if you go through a period of time when you're under a lot of psychological stress, whether it's trauma or work stress or financial stress or any of that kind of stuff, it's changed your metabolism, it's changed your storage, and now you're trying to get yourself out of that. Even if you're just reducing your stress load, that's one of the signals now that is being read by the adipose tissue that says, oh, the stress is lower, my metabolism is better, my ability to metabolize is better. Let's get some of this fat out of here. But with that fat comes those toxins that we just talked about. So yeah, that's a beautiful example of a toxin that isn't really like an environmental toxin. It's this psychological toxin.
Awesome, man. Very fascinating. So we've got Angel has a question here. Got their hand raised. Let me see if I can unmute them. I don't know if that'll work for me, but maybe. There you go. Go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Sean. So I just completed my reboot last night, and the first 2 days were pretty good. I made it through, uh, and I felt pretty good, and I actually slept well. And on the third day, I noticed that because I came home kind of late, I had a late dinner, so I took my Vita GBX and my Omega, and my last set of the reboot. And I noticed that I had a hard time falling asleep for some reason. I don't know if it was just part of the detox, or if maybe the Vita GBX had some kind of gave me a lift of energy or something that I couldn't quite seem to turn off, the mind and, and stuff. So I wasn't sure if it was related to that or just something completely different. Because the previous 2 days I slept great.
Yeah, hard to say on a very acute level like that. Especially since you get good night's sleep on the first 2 days of it, and in that third, it could have been that just because your circadian rhythm was a little bit off because you came home from work late.
Okay.
Sometimes we see that in people who are doing exercise, right? They typically exercise in the morning, but for whatever reason they couldn't do it, so they exercise later in the day, like right after work or something like that.
Right.
They have trouble falling asleep that night sometimes too. So it could have been something like that, just sort of a one-off, sort of a situation. Yeah, hard. I wish I had a sort of a straightforward answer for you too, but see how you go. So when was this? Was this your third day of reboot? Was it just like yesterday?
It was yesterday, yes. So
Okay.
last
Yeah.
night.
So see how you go now that you go on the fundamentals. One of the things that
Right.
you'll probably notice is that once you add in the fundamentals, one of the really cool effects of it is that as you start growing that population of good bacteria that we talk about a lot, one of those populations that we're growing is associated with lowering stress and lowering cortisol, but also increasing the production of this neurotransmitter called GABA. And GABA is something that can help us sleep and help us relax kind of on demand. It's not a neurotransmitter that relaxes us automatically. It's a neurotransmitter that is, if it's available, and if we have the bacteria that are producing it, and it's available when we need it, our body makes use of it to either get deep sleep or relax or sort of be a hedge against tension. So you're going to notice that feeling coming into your body once you start doing the fundamentals regimen.
Okay. Is adding Sleep Plus a good one to add as well, or?
Yeah, it could be. So the Sleep Plus product really is around not so much getting you to fall asleep, right? It does do that. It helps people fall asleep about 33% faster, which is good, but it's not like a knockout kind of a product, right? So it doesn't make you drowsy, it doesn't put you to sleep. But if you, in concert with that GABA effect that I just mentioned, right? If you go, so here's the regimen that I recommend to people. Take your Sleep Plus about 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes before you go to bed. Make sure within that time period you're avoiding light as much as possible. So shut off your computer, dim the lights, turn off the TV, put down your iPad and your iPhone and all that kind of stuff. Get rid of all that stimulating blue light. Read a book for 30 to 60 minutes before you go to bed. Like read on a non-lit Kindle or an actual paper book. People probably remember what those are. You can find them at your local library. They're these sort of ancient devices. But do that, and when you get sleepy enough to fall asleep, go to sleep. And what Sleep Plus is going to do is help you get into the deep stages of sleep and the REM stages of sleep. So your body recovers and your mind recovers. But it's not going to knock you out, right? So that's why you have to do those steps ahead of time to sort of get yourself relaxed enough to sort of drop off. Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Great information.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man. All right, good. I'll toss him back on mute there. And then Tim has a question. Hang on, let me see if I can unmute Tim. See if that works. Tim, you there?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing great, Tim.
Hey, I'm so glad you're having this talk tonight, Dr. Sean. And I was going to ask you about this very thing. Remember when I asked I wanted to email you? And I kind of knew that this was going to be the answer, but in my case, I'm definitely one of those guys. I mean, I'm not that frog that was boiled. I was the lobster that was thrown into the boiling water. Okay, so, um, I've been through a lot the last 3 years, a lot of antibiotics, a lot of painkillers, morphine, you name it, I've done it. And to be honest with you, after my initial couple of surgeries, I was where my body was, some of the toxins, some of the depression, some of the like, oh, I'm getting better after cancer surgery, yada, yada, yada. But then last year, I had to do chemo and radiation, and that really was a big sock in the gut, you guys. And I did not realize how much I was affected, not only physically, mentally, and emotionally, until I did the reboot. And when I did the reboot, I was definitely that lobster thrown in the boiling water. And I experienced a lot of discomfort. Obviously, I had a lot of toxins in my body, cisplatin and all these antibiotics still.
Yep.
And you know it was amazing though. I just gritted my teeth. I went through it. I had some sleepless nights. I tried the sleep product, and to be honest with you, it didn't help me at all. But I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And once I finished the reboot, I started on the fundamentals. Boom, right away within 2 days. All the kidney pain that was flushing through my toxin, all the toxins flushing through my kidneys and my system and my lymph system. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And then on top of that, on the third day that I was on fundamentals, I also did a coffee enema, and that was glorious, just truly glorious. So you guys, if yeah, I am
Hey Tim, I gotta stop you. I can tell you we're not working on a coffee enema as one of our next products.
dang, dang, but no,
but
guys,
you know what you're describing, right? That I mean, you went through this and you didn't have the benefit of sort of knowing that it was logical that you would feel, based on the sort of toxic load that you had before, that you had
yeah,
all the stuff kind of stored in your body. Like what was it that made you push through it, right? I mean, a lot of people would just go, this sucks. I don't want to do this, right? What was it that, like, did you think you were going to come out the other side better?
oh yeah, what pushed me through is all the chaos, I mean, I was to hell in a handbasket through this cancer ordeal, and I knew I've always been trying to treat myself naturally. I tried to avoid chemo and radiation, and after the second recurrence, my third tumor, and I mean, the chemo did its job, the radiation did its job. It eradicated the cancer cells in my lymph system. That's why I kept having the recurrences. But I knew for a fact when I knew you were working on these Amari products, when I saw the videos, when I saw the ingredients, when I saw the integrity going into the company, and once I started, I knew my kidneys were gonna ache. I could feel it, but I knew it was gonna be on the other side. It was gonna be the difference between night and day. I just knew it. I just knew it. I have no other
Nice.
explanation. It was a divine message, if you will. And that third day that I was on fundamentals, and I've been on the fundamentals ever since. I mean, I have a weight and a cloud that's been lifted that I haven't. I feel like I'm 25 again, and I'm 51, and you know I'm so grateful I had a chance to say some of this yesterday, but you guys having this talk today, I think is very, very instrumental for everybody, no matter what your ailment. Get on the reboot, get on the fundamentals, just trust that it's going to work.
Nice. Thanks a lot for sharing that.
Thanks, Tim. You are a great inspiration to a lot of people, man. We appreciate you.
I love and appreciate all of you.
All right, so Mark, I'm going to see if I can undo Mark here. Let's see if Mark's out there. Mark, you there?
Yeah. Hi. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Actually, I have some people with me. My question is from Rob Hunt here, Dr. Hunt.
Hi. My background is I'm a psychiatrist with a research background at Harvard and Yale and a couple other places. And so what I'm interested in is, could we, I can design some studies that would compare standard, effective, proven psychiatric medications to the kind of interventions that you provide. And we might be able to identify which patients really do better on your treatments, or would your treatments be relevant to reducing the doses of standard medications required. I think it's a critical issue. I think that's where the rubber reaches the road in terms of the quality of improvement that your methods generate versus what our methods generate, and looking at side effects and functioning. I've developed software for doing all of that, and it's on the market and it's well recognized and has been used in quite a bit of research. So we'd be in a position to actually pull that off. And I'm curious whether you would welcome that.
Yeah, well, hey, Dr. Hunt, nice to talk to you again. We were on a call several weeks ago, so nice to hear you again. And now I can see you actually. So it's not so much that I wouldn't be interested in it. I would be very interested in that kind of stuff. I'll tell you who would not be interested in that is FDA. FDA absolutely hates that kind of thing. I was involved with a company 20 years ago where we tried to do exactly what you just described, and FDA went berserk. So because what they hate is trying to see a direct comparison, drugs to supplements, let's say, right? Drugs to natural therapies, because what that is the terminology that they'll use is that what you're trying to do is by doing that study, you're trying to make an implied claim that the supplement is better than the drug or equivalent to the drug. And that's something they really, really, really don't like. So the best that we can do within their sort of preferences is to say, here's our supplement studies using some of the same measurement techniques, right? So in the depression world, we're going to look at, Beck depression indexes and Hamilton depression scales and profile of mood states and things like that. Some of the same scales that are used in the pharma trials. But then you've got two studies in different populations for different time periods, and all that comes with trying to compare two completely different studies, which you're well aware of. But that's as good as it gets sometimes.
I think we could do those studies. I think we could get this first of all, it doesn't have to be an approved FDA study.
No, I know. And I totally understand. And I understand the studies can be done, but the danger of doing them is what I just described. FDA completely views that as an implied marketing attempt. So that's all.
But whether it's marketing depends on what the outcome of the data is.
Maybe you and I could discuss this offline a little bit.
We can, but I think there's a way to do this. In fact, I'm sure there is. So, and I think it would be a good thing. I think
when you come to Nashville, maybe.
Yeah, if you get to Nashville, we can design it.
I'm gonna be in Nashville at some point, so maybe we can talk about it then.
Yeah, and I'll have the design for you.
That sounds great.
Okay, nice to be here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Yeah, Mark, thanks, bud. Appreciate you. All right, so anybody else want to raise your hand? You're more than welcome to. Or let's see, we've got, we're at the top of the hour already, dude.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Let's look at the chat. Let's look at the chat and see if there's anything in there that we want to cover here in the last 2 minutes.
All right. If someone wants to lose weight and fat, what would you recommend with our products? I wouldn't recommend anything different than how we recommend it, right? So, people would get on the fundamentals kit, and you're going to get, You're going to get great gut benefits. You're going to get lower inflammation, which is going to be good for your cortisol control and your insulin function and your thyroid function and all of those metabolic hormones. So metabolically, you're doing everything you need to do to set your body up for any of the diet plans that are out there, right? Which are, you need to lower your caloric intake. But lowering your caloric intake a lot of times doesn't have the effect that you want it to unless your metabolism is in the right place. So our fundamentals kit gets your metabolism in the right place, and that could be applied to any sort of a regimen, whether you want to do keto, whether you want to do, one of the boxed meal plan diets out there, whether you want to do Mediterranean diet, which is what I recommend to most people. Our plan would set you up for success on one of those sort of regimens.
Cool.
So that's what I would recommend. There was something else up there I wanted to get into. Which one was it?
Okay.
If you wanted to, this one, I've been asked this a couple times. If you wanted to do another reboot some months in, do you continue on the fundamentals during that second reboot? That's a good question. And I'm kind of 50-50 on it. On the one hand, you could say to yourself, well, don't do it, because with the reboot, you're really just going to be washing all that good stuff right out of your body. But then on the other level, you're not really washing all of it out of your body. It's not like we're giving you like this harsh laxative kind of a cleanse that really is just washing everything out. It's not that sort of a thing. So I think I would be more inclined to say to people, just stay on it while you do that second reboot, because it is going to help you, with the, with your stress resilience and with your inflammation and with your mental focus and things like that. So I would probably say stay on it. So maybe I'm 51% stay on and 49% drop it off. So you can decide what to do.
Yeah. Very good. Any questions about blood thinners? Any issues?
Yeah, blood thinners are a tough one because, it used to be blood thinners were only, Coumadin, warfarin kinds of things. And so what you would say to people is, well, just get your vitamin K standardized, right? Take your multivitamin, same vitamin K level every single day, and you're good to go. Your doctor can dial in your dose of Coumadin, you'll be all set. Now there's so many different kinds of blood thinners out there. One thing that I tell people is that lots of our products have blood thinning effects, but it's a healthy blood thinning effect. It'd be the kind of effect like if you're eating a McDonald's style diet right now, your blood is thick and likely to coagulate. And then if you switch that person to like a salad and salmon kind of a diet, lots of fiber, lots of omega-3s, lots of flavonoids, not a lot of fat and inflammatory compounds. Over here, this blood on the good diet is going to be thinner than the blood over here on this terrible diet, right? That's the magnitude of blood thinning that we have with our products. So it's a healthy blood thinning, but if you're dosed up on a blood thinner on this bad diet style lifestyle, and you go to this good style lifestyle and your blood is a little bit thinner, now your blood might be too thin in the context of the dose that they gave you when you were over here. So I like people to be aware of that so that they can go back to their doctors and say, hey, maybe we need to come down to a lower dose of whatever my blood thinner is. So that's just for people to be aware of. It's not like our ingredients are going to interfere or interact with the blood thinner, just like we're not interfering or interacting with the antidepressants or the anti-anxieties or any of that kind of stuff. But those people might need a readjustment as they start to feel better. It's the same sort of a scenario.
Last but not least, we'll do the last one here, just because of the opioid epidemic and all the other things that are going on. Any way that our products become habit forming, other than good habit formings, right? That make us feel the way we feel.
Yeah, not habit forming in that sort of a way, right? Habit forming in the way that you're gonna like the way you feel, and when you get to that point, you're going to want to keep taking the products. One of the things that I really love about it, and people say this all the time, they go, I actually crave the products, right? And so they're not really craving the products, they're craving the feeling that the products are delivering into their bodies. And so, if it's not an addiction per se, right? But once you get to a point where you feel good, you want to keep feeling good. And when you go off the products, that's what we said before, sometimes if you stop taking them, you're going to sense that drop off, and that's not a good sensation. You want to avoid that. And so if we can get people to avoid the badness and crave the goodness, that's a healthy addiction if you want to put that label on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, hey man, you're the best. You absolutely are. We appreciate you so much. That's why these are so popular. It's just so helpful. Thank you for your time tonight, buddy.
My pleasure. Thanks everybody for joining in. See you next time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will record this, or have recorded this. We will put it up and available at Zoom with Pat on the deep dive information stuff, because I think this was worthy of that type of introduction. And everybody have a great night. Appreciate you. See you on Saturday for our Strive for Life Zoom. And then next week, we'll be together again each night, 8 o'clock Central Time. Bring a guest, and we'll do the rest. Okay? So there we go. Good night. Bye.
Bye, guys. Good night.
See ya.